So the doctor, the nurse came out, and they said, Miss Taylor, you need to go to this room. And my son said, Mom, if you go in that room, I need to hold your hand.
I couldn't see or hear anything. I don't know how long I sat in this room, but it was the most cold, unwelcoming room I've ever been in my life.
And the room is a reflection of how void of what people know. The only people that know how this message is delivered are the people who deliver it and the people who receive it. What we thought that we needed to say is, here's the reality of our lives that we do, 40,000 times a year in the United States, at least, right? It's a horrible place to be to give the news after you've worked on a child for half an hour, that doesn't survive a gunshot. And you're giving the news to a parent who's leaving the hospital without a child. And you're never going to see that person again.
There's a very specific sound that a mother makes when you tell her her child is dead. And that sound sticks with you forever.
I keep myself busy and fighting because of my son, Daniel Taylor. Daniel was a go-getter. He was a funny, outspoken person. He went to Mass Bay Community College. He got his degree in criminal justice, and then he also said that's not what he wanted to be. So after that, he also pursued his career in being an electrician, and he got his degree in electrician and also got a job being an electrician.
What I want people to know about Louis and what I remember about him is he's every parent's child. He really didn't like to do hard work. He ate me out of house and home. He loved chocolate milk. He loved Chinese food. Anything that has to do with eating food, Louis loved. At the same time, Louis also had huge dreams. He wanted to be the first black president of the United States. He didn't just have dreams. He wrote that down in a project when he was in the 8th grade at the King School.
Marquise is beautiful. He's like his mom. He's humbling. He's happy-go-lucky, always smiling. Like even in the photo that the police took, them big, beautiful teeth. He's dark-skinned, so whenever he smiles, all you saw. He'll give you the coat off his back, dollar out his pocket. He was always giving, always caring. If he saw you on the side of the road with a flat tire, he would stop.
Danny was all about family. He just loved family. And I always say, he had a heart like mine, but a temper like his father. A lot of people were scared of Danny, but he was loyal to the end. And he has a dry sense of humor. He was always, he just did the silliest stuff. And he loved to draw, loved family. And his daughter, his only daughter, Denasia, was born, it just had a promising future.
My son was born August 11, and he was killed 10 days after he turned 26. He loved basketball, he loved music, and he loved food. When he got out of jail, he went to Bunker Hill to apply to become do culinary arts, become a chef. Didn't get far because of the situation.
Prior to his death, we went on a cruise, a 7-day cruise, and I begged him to go to the captain's ball with me, and we went, and that's the picture. I begged him to go to the captain's ball and put on a shirt and tie, and this only ended up being his obituary picture, because this was the last shirt and tie he was in. But I believe in fate. I believe in God. Like God knew his destiny. Because I always say, he was my child. He wasn't no saint, but that was my child.
The day I was notified about my son's death was on a Tuesday. I actually was at work. My son called me and asked me what I was doing after work, and I was like, going shopping. He said, I'll meet you there. When I got home, I got tired of waiting for him. So as I got ready to step out my house to go shopping, I got a phone call stating that something happened to Bo, which is my son, for me to go to Boston Medical Center.
So we shot to the hospital, and some of the people that were at the hospital, were at the scene, came to the hospital and said, hey, that didn't happen like that. A nurse tried to approach Colin and said that, a couple more minutes he would have been resuscitated, Bo. And that was a lie, because Bo had died at the scene.
We're at the very tail end of all of the factors that lead to an epidemic of gun violence in our country, and we're here to patch up the bullet holes, but there's so much more that goes into violence and precedes that event.
The culture of violence in my neighborhood and in my community that I grew up in was, in a way, a form of currency, right? Where it gave you purchasing right to respect, power, authority. Those with more guns were more feared. Those who were more violent were more accessible to things in the neighborhood. Not only that, but they also connected with the people who did other things in the neighborhood, right? Which led to more violence.
I would say the last 20, 25 years, gun violence has been really traumatic in our community, whether I was affected directly or indirectly, that have taken so many of my friends and my family members' children.
Men and boys from my community that I've watched grow up, that I've watched, grow up, and they wanted to be doctors, they wanted to be basketball players, they wanted to be all kind of things, but because of the environment, they just went a different path.
As a child growing up in that neighborhood, it kind of numbs you to the harshest things in society, right? You go from not worrying about the little things to caring about the bigger issues. It's not whether or not I'm coming home with bad grades, but whether or not I'm making it home.
Everywhere he went, he was driven because we were concerned about the violence that was happening. And so Lewis never walked anywhere. So the day he walked was the day he was killed.
For instance, when you speak about gun violence, I was highly impacted back in 2003 when I was falsely accused of a crime that I didn't commit. And it led to 8 years of incarceration before I was released. But through that ordeal, it was never proven whether or not I committed the crime, but that I was the best candidate to be found guilty.
We're supposed to be in the land of the free, but due to all that's happening, they don't feel that way. We're kind of crippled in our home. We're afraid to go outside because of the violence and the bullets. I had to, number one, be told that my son's life was taken. I had to go to the morgue, not one morgue, but 2 morgues to view my son's body. I had to see my son's lifeless body on the table in the morgue.
So my daughter works in the medical field, so she got arrangement for me to go see my child. But the only way I could see my child was I had to be handcuffed to see him. So Becca came back and she said, Mom, the only way you can see Daniel, you have to be handcuffed. I said, okay, I gotta see my baby. Didn't matter. So I got a handcuff and they escorted me down this long, cold hallway.
I couldn't even see him right away because it was 3 people there at the hospital. It was packed with people, everybody trying to find out who's their loved one. And I remember going in and they said to me, which one is yours? How do you ask a mother who was just told her son is dead and all you can say, which one is mine?
So he showed us a picture to identify to make sure it was my son. And I said, yes, that's my son, but could I have a picture? A copy of that picture? He said, no, you can't. I'm like, I can't have a copy of this picture? He said, no, nobody gets a copy of a picture of this child or loved one in the morgue. That's their records.
And you're not just dealing with the loss of your child, you're dealing with how people treat you. Like when my son life was taken, they tried to say he was a gangbanger, he was this, he was that.
I felt like I was a criminal the way they were treating me. Like, you said my son did something. Even if he did, I didn't do it.
It was like everyone was there and, oh, we love you, we're there for you. And I cried a little, but I couldn't get those gut-wrenching, those boogie snot, like healing cries. They were like in the middle of the night, right? When nobody was around. Because I was so worried about your feeling and his feeling. And then when I was by myself, or when I was driving down the street, when I seen my Danny, I could just pull over and just break down and cry. Because everyone was my Danny. Every time I seen him when he died, I always seen him walking down the street.
Rashawn Peters, I'm the Violence Recovery Coordinator at Brigham and Women's Hospital. I'm working within the Burn and Trauma Division, and I'm also part of the Community Equity component or department.
Katie Haskins, Violence Intervention Advocacy Program Coordinator at Massachusetts General Hospital.
I work with survivors of community violence and homicide, so that includes gunshot wounds, stab wounds, and assaults. My job is basically to be an advocate.
As far as resources, it depends. Everybody's a little different. What's needed. Some people really need you to help guide them through that space there. Sometimes there is opportunities to connect with people after discharge. One of the biggest things is housing, sometimes employment support, education support. Sometimes people come to our hospital, they're already doing the right thing. And we need to write letters, speak to the medical team. So it's kind of what you need. I'm not going to say we have everything, but we are connected to different resources, different providers, different community partners. So it's nothing to do with warm handoff when it comes to working with a family or a patient.
There was no, I'm sorry for your loss. There was no, she got other kids, let me help make sure they get something to eat tonight because I know today was a stressful day. There was no checking in on my kids to see if they had any mental health services. There was none of that, until I went to Legacy Lives On and the Peace Institute.
The only comfort I got and peace, only knowledge I got was my girlfriend told me about the Peace Institution. Because at that time, I didn't want to hear nothing. And I didn't know where to go. But she sent me to the Peace Institution.
It's a group of mothers and fathers whose kids were murdered, a club nobody wants to be a part of.
I don't even know how it happened, but we got introduced to a support group. Legacy Lives On. And we got into that support group, and everybody started talking about their hurt and their pain and how someone was lost in their family, so we could identify.
You know, because I tell people all the time, homicide does not come with directions or instructions. So there's no book that tells you how to be or what to do. I did go to the Peace Institute for support, and they gave me support around the victims' compensation. But in the aftermath, as we know, as our loved ones are buried, everybody's gone. You know, all the support is gone, the lights off, you know, everything is back on you by yourself individually. I started this organization, Legacy Live On, for support in the aftermath.
Although this is not a club you want to be a part of, you meet amazing, supportive, loving, always got your back. It's a majority of women, but there are some fathers there. you learn so much. And it's all, your healing is all in what tools you gravitate to, what tools you pick up, what tools you use.
And what you need in order to build strength or build anything that you want, you need tools. You know, so I said, you need a toolbox. So everybody was like, a toolbox? What are you talking about? I said, you need a toolbox. You need a box to carry your... all your things around. Your hammers, your wrenches, you know, your courage, you know, your hope, your dreams, you know. Anything that you want to happen, you put it in the box. And you try to utilize it for the future.
And that's why I credit Lipstick to my healing, because it gave me that platform. Not only to heal, but take accountability and to really realize that none of our children are born bad.
I just didn't see my life going anywhere positive. I started asking for help and being honest about the part I played in some of the decisions or the actions or the path my son took.
I started to get better. I started to like Danny was walking with me. Like I didn't even know where I was getting the strength. I was saying things and I was doing all these presentations in the city and not knowing, but I know it was him walking with me. I know he gave me the strength.
People see us in like, for someone who just had a loss and they come into Legacy and they see us and they be like, wow, like y'all lost kids. We have moms who lost 2 children, you know. But if they didn't tell you, you would never know.
When the Peace Institute had the mindful meditation, I was there. They did the yoga, I was there. They had the writing class, I was there. If they just had pizza night, I was there. It was just so to give you a space to heal, cry, whatever it is you wanted to do.
We all have what's within us, the innate ability. We all have what it is that we need to heal internally. We just need a safe and neutral space for that to happen without judgment. And that's what Sandtray Wordplay did for me. This modality is something that has helped me when I've had no words to say, what am I feeling? How am I feeling? What is going on? And so this is one of those modalities I tell people kept me out of a mental institution. It was culturally and spiritually relevant to me. Talking to a therapist didn't work for me because they didn't look like me. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Sandtray Wordplay, Sandplay therapy. So it's made up of everything that's in the world, everything that's possible, everything that could be in the world. There are different color sands, different size trays. And it's not about having a perfect world. So we broke them down in different categories. Death and grieving, peace and war, religious, spirituality, superheroes, supervillains, dwellings, houses, fences, bridges, transportation. Again, everything that is in the world, critters, creatures, you name it, it's there. And people will donate. People will donate images or miniatures. We don't call them toys. That's one thing I've learned. We don't call them toys. They're miniatures. They're images, and they just make up the world. And so when people come in, a lot of times, it's not always about talking. You can feel when something is on somebody's heart, when something is heavy. And the invitation is, see what's calling you. Put it in the sand and leave it there. Or is it a reminder to which of these principles or which of these images reminds you of whatever that reminder is? keep it visual, keep it visible. And you are the architect of your own inner healing. Tell your story.
You know, I do a lot of restorative justice work. I was also introduced to that by another mom who lost her son. And it has been so fulfilling, so honoring to be an impact, to be a force around restorative justice, right? Accountability, forgiveness, and all those good things those tools that we need to survive in our everyday life.
A lot of these kids, men, there's potential there. They just have to have opportunities. And a lot of time they're not offered those opportunities.
It really has impacted me a great deal, where doing a lot of powerful work in the community, as well as, you know, building and continuing to build to try to help our community be safer, to try to support all of us in a whole to live and not just exist.
I would be doing my son an injustice because he turned his life around to not try to help someone else be able to turn their life around.
I started to heal, and I started to, like, I'm gonna tell you my story before someone else tries to tell it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And when you tell it, you heal, right? When you tell it and it's authentic and it's truth, you heal.
I want courage so I can be able to say things about my child without breaking down, and have courage to fight for him, that the cause of not fighting for myself. I just need courage for that.
You know the sad thing about it? I had compassion for the young man who took my son's life. As they would say, the person of interest. And I believe in second chances. You know, unfortunately, you know, this young man has killed again and again. And at some point, I just believe you need to sit still.
The Peace Institute as the center is what we use to feed the good within our community, is what we use to transform that narrative. It's not saying gun violence is not happening, but there's a root to gun violence. What is it that we can do? We can't just stop gun violence without putting something in its place. And that's the work that we're doing to nurture, to cultivate, to transform this thing called peace. And hopefully, those who feel the need to pick up a gun to take someone else's life, we need to find a way to make sure what is it that they need that they don't have to resort to taking another human being's life. There's this story about a grandson talking to his grandfather, talking about he's so angry, and so the grandfather says, well, there are two wolves inside of us. There's good and evil, and they're both fighting inside of you, you know. And then the grandson says, well, grandfather, which wolf will win? The one you feed.